Welcome back to you. Oh, excuse me, the phone. Hold on one moment. Yep. Oh, it's a robocall. Apparently, if I want to vote Liberal, I have to go to Brussels, Belgium. That's where the nearest booth is, the nearest place for me to vote. And being a Liberal, I'm going to do that right now. Oh, good Lord. This is such a digression. Robocalls. Look, it could well be. Maybe it's not true, but it could be that maybe a handful of people thought, well, we'll call some Liberal voters and try and confuse them, and they're easily confused, it would seem. And the epicenter of this is Guelph, where the Liberals won by, I think, more than 6,000 votes, for goodness sake. You know, for years, for decades now, Tories have been marginalised and abused and attacked. There have been all these nasty calls that have been made, attacks in media, lies being told, Stockwell Day called a Holocaust denier, Preston Manning a white supremacist. These are such gentle, decent people. It does defy belief, or maybe it doesn't. It doesn't defy John Robson, who's in Ottawa now, and he's a very clever fellow. John, welcome to you.
Thank you.
Now, you know, the democratic process, I hate to say sacred, it sounds rather pompous, but there is something incredibly important about democracy. But I think this is really just a very, very small hiccup, if you like. But the media, the consensus media, are playing it as though it's at the center of the body politic.
Well, it started as a hiccup, but I'm thinking now that it's more serious, because the opposition parties and a great deal of the press are taking for granted that those no-good, wretched, stinking Tories who have no business in decent society have conspired to swindle the electorate. It's a serious accusation that there has been not merely a little bit of jiggery-pokery unauthorized, but a systematic, widespread campaign to deny Canadians their right to vote. If this is true, it needs to be investigated seriously by adults, and anybody found guilty of it needs to be harshly punished. But if I say to somebody, you know, that Michael Coren, he's just a no-good guy, he jaywalks, and I haven't actually got any evidence that you jaywalked, people will say, oh, well, okay, that's not true. If I say Michael Coren is a murderer and I have no evidence, they're going to think that I am a very bad person. You don't make accusations this serious without some substance behind them. And the opposition parties, it seems to me, have been behaving in a manner that does bring grave discredit on our political system. Although, I've got to be fair with this, the Prime Minister stood up in the Commons and said, nah, 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 it was you calling from the United States, when he didn't have evidence either. So they're a plague on all their houses. What is the matter with these people that they cannot react to a serious issue as though they were serious people?
Well, a couple of comments there. First of all, the Liberals lost a fair number of seats to the NDP. Now, the logic of their campaign right now would be the NDP were also making such calls, but they haven't alleged that at all. And then we've had about 30,000 complaints to Elections Canada in a very brief period of time after all of this was revealed. You don't have to be Einstein here to realize that people are being told, encouraged to, who knows where it comes from, Mr. Ray, to phone Election Canada and saying, I received such a call as well. But I want to play to you now, John. We just got this today. Now, let me set this up. In Guelph, Ontario, the Liberals are holding this one, even though the Tories were doing well. The very good Tory candidate, Marty Burke, he's a pilot, a very impressive man. He's pro-life. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to ban abortion, but he wants a debate about the issue. He thinks it's an important issue, as many, many Canadians do, probably the majority of the country. Phone messages were sent out to a number of people in the riding of Guelph, including to Mr. Burke's neighbour, who showed this to him and played this to him. We now have the call. I'm not saying this comes from the Liberal Party, but I would say to you that the people who were very frightened of Mr. Burke doing well were the Liberals. We're going to show a picture of Marty Burke. Let's hear this message that was sent out to huge numbers of people in the riding. Let's hear it now, please.
Hi, I'm Laurie McDonald of Guelph. I'm appalled by what I read in the Mercury today. I've been an advocate for women's rights for most of my life. Conservative candidate Marty Burke believes that under absolutely no circumstance should a woman have the right to choose. Government should not be able to force their beliefs onto me. We live in a multi-faith, multicultural society. Let's move forward and not back. The race in Guelph is very close. Vote strategically on Monday to protect our hard-earned rights from the Conservatives and Marty's extreme views.
Now, that's a dishonest call. There's a number of lies in that call. We don't know where it came from. We haven't researched that yet. But is that a robocall?
It doesn't sound to me, if that's a person reading a script, they're doing it very stiffly. I don't know, it's the first time I've heard this, whether this is an actual identifiable person or a composite kind of normal, decent, conservative-hating Canadian. But, I mean, politics is a nasty business, and you see people in different political parties often despise one another. I've sat in parliamentary committees where it was atrocious to see the degree of dislike between the Social Democrats on one side of the table and the Tories on the other. But it's one thing to say, well, you know, this guy is actually against the thing we won't name because it's so great, but it's another thing to try to swindle people out of the right to vote. You know, this isn't about politics being nasty initially. It's about an allegation that the Conservatives committed widespread voting fraud. I mean, John McCallum said the Conservatives borrowed this from their Republican friends to the south. In other words, he tagged the Conservatives with it. Bob Rae said there's a Nixonian culture. This kind of stuff doesn't happen unless the boss lets it happen. When it turned out that WikiLeaks 30 was a Liberal staffer, this became inoperative, to use a Nixonian word. But the degree of venom, when you're taking an unfounded accusation, treating it as established fact, typical of the dirty dogs opposite, and even proof that the whole election is illegitimate, you are engaging in a kind of viciousness that is far more serious than when you merely say a pro-life candidate would like to deny women
but John,
the right to choose.
I've seen elections very close up in 3 countries now. Now, people are old people who, with all due respect to them, barely know which country they still live in, are driven to vote for a specific party. And all the parties have played this game. You have a long time to vote. If someone calls you, we had misleading information. I'm in Parkdale High Park. I mean, that's NDP heaven there. There's the Tories. Oh, my golly. There have to be a change of climate. Hell would have to freeze over before they could ever win in that riding. I was given misleading information. I don't think it was malice. I think it was incompetence. It happened throughout the country. It's largely irrelevant. There will be some dirty tricks, but no one is saying abolish democracy, although we could argue that governments that get into power and then reverse their policy on taxation, on the nature of marriage, that they actually are, if you like, raping democracy. But that wasn't the Tories who did that.
Yeah, and also the attempt to suppress third-party speech during elections, that only politicians and we talking heads can go on at any length we choose, that regular citizens aren't allowed to spend a significant amount of money to say what they think. I think that's anti-democratic, and all the parties agree on that. The Tories didn't used to, but then, you know, that was then. But again, what comes back to here is that this juvenile viciousness has now attached itself to charges of criminal conspiracy. And this is a matter where the opposition parties need to take a deep breath, look in the mirror, say, I am behaving worse than the people I hate. I cannot continue to do this. We've made the allegations, and, you know, this McCarthy business, oh, dozens of ridings, 40 ridings, blah, 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 blah. You know, it keeps changing. No, stop, settle down. Tell us what you think. Show us your evidence. You had a recorded robocall there. That means other people could have recorded these. Did anybody? Because if not, the opposition parties say it happened. Suddenly there's thousands of complaints. If the opposition party said that Stephen Harper was in league with Martians, Elections Canada would be getting calls about little green men they remember seeing on election day.
Of course. And this rumour, apparently, that Michael Ignatieff got a number of robocalls saying, act as though you are lacking in charisma and style, that you're arrogant, have no empathy, you're robotic and would rather be in another country. Those calls made him act thus, and that's why he lost the election. And that's terrible. John, thank you as ever. You take care.
You too.